Welcome back to another Coffee with Samso, the Discovery Series. We are still in Adelaide, along the Adelaide markets. We are going to be talking to the team that discovered Prominent Hill, who are now in PTR Minerals Limited. PTR Minerals have their projects in South Australia in the Gawler Craton. They have been searching for IOCG type or IOCG deposits in the Gawler and recently made a discovery of a significant titanium project along the railway line between Perth and Adelaide. So Peter Reid is going to be coming back talking to us with some of the team members and the enlarged team members for PTR Minerals. He's going to be talking to us about the discovery of the titanium project and also the other projects that's happening in PTR Minerals themselves. I'd like to take this opportunity before we get into the discussion to thank everyone who has supported Samso platform over the years. I hope you guys are enjoying the Samso News initiative that we started in May 2025. And those who have not joined us, please do subscribe to our YouTube channel and subscribe to our mailing list on the website. It does help us increase our engagement with ASX investors and also build on our Samso community. And if you want to take that extra step, go to our support page. There are several ways that you can support us: donation or following us on a monthly contribution. If you do that, that would be well appreciated as we try and keep our organic content as independent as we can show it to you guys. Thank you again to everybody. And as usual, grab your favorite beverage and sit back, enjoy Coffee with Samso. Thank you. Welcome to another Coffee with Samso. As I said in the introduction, we've got PTR Minerals here and effectively the team from Minotaur Resources who make the discovery at Prominent Hill. So we have Peter Reid here who will drive the story for us, who's the CEO of PTR Minerals.
That's right, yeah.
Take it away, Peter.
Yeah, thanks, Noel. I'll quickly introduce everyone. On my right here is Barry Vanderstelt, PTR Minerals Exploration Manager. Sam Rash here, who's our project geologist for the Muckaninny project, where was involved in the discovery of Rosewood. Derek Carter, our chairman. We had a great chat yesterday about the Minotaur story, and Derek was the MD, and he's our chairman today at PTR Minerals. And right on the end of the couch there's Rob Sennett, who's an executive director for Petrotherm, or PTR Minerals, who's joined us in the last sort of 12 months and has been really driving the company in a commercial aspect, since post-discovery, and it's a really exciting period for the company.
So obviously PTR came from Petrotherm. Do you want to give us that story? Because there is a story behind everything.
I think Petrotherm is a really interesting story. If we go back to 2004, there was a company called Geodynamics that tried this thing called hot dry rock energy, where they were drilling down to 4 or 5 kilometres depth and trying to use the heat of the Earth's crust to boil water, to make steam, to drive a turbine, to make electricity. And it was a wonderful, simple concept. There were known hot rocks in the centre of Australia in the Innerminka Basin, and they were the darlings of the geothermal world in 2003 with the work they were doing. And I went to a talk that they gave, and Bertus de Graaf was running the company. He was one of Derek's old work colleagues. Mm-hmm. And he's talking about this wonderful, the story about producing green energy from hot rocks at depth. And I thought there must be other spots that are actually hot. And I knew it related a little bit to radiogenic decay. We're talking about radiogenic heat here, not heat formed from volcanic activity along plate margins, but heat generated from granites that are deeply buried, that are insulated, and they can create lovely thermal anomalies where you might get temperatures around 200 degrees at about 4 kilometres depth that you can tap into and make some steam. And I was immediately drawn to the Paralana Hot Springs, which are in the northern tip of the Flinders Ranges here in South Australia, and we knew that hot spring was driven by radiogenic decay of hot granites at depth. And I recall within Minotaur, we pulled out a gravity image of that area, and to the north of the Paralana Hot Springs, we go into the Eromanga Basin to the north, was a beautiful granite, was buried at about 2 kilometres depth, we called the Callabonna granite. And using geophysics, granites pop up as beautiful gravity lows. So I could see this lovely circular low sitting there. It was deeply buried. I thought that could be a spot where there's hot rocks at depth. And it was a bit of a sliding doors moment for me. And I thought about it for a couple of weeks and built up my thinking about it. And then I approached Derek and pitched it to Derek. And Derek said, "Oh, what a great idea. Let's run with it." So suddenly we're exploring for heat. And we got in contact with the University of Adelaide, worked with a guy called Professor Martin Hand, who was a crustal heat modelling expert, and we created all these models for how you explore for heat. What ingredients do you need? What does the chemistry of the rocks need to be? What sort of cover material do you need on top of those hot rocks to trap the heat? We developed all these models, and out of that, within about 3 or 4 months, we developed a prospectus, and we floated the company mid-2004 as a hot rock geothermal explorer. And I think we're probably the first company in the world to actually do that, to explore for heat. And how do you sell the concept of drilling a hole and measuring the temperature at the bottom of the hole, or measuring the rate of temperature increase down that hole? It's a whole new concept, but the market liked it. We did very well in that market. And following Petrotherm's great IPO and our initial exploration, we saw a whole raft of companies float on the back of that idea. So we were one of the pioneers, and we did a lot of really good work in those early days.
Because that was not long after your success at Prominent Hill. Did you think that maybe you could bank on that support, or was it, hey, this sounds like a great idea, out of left field, and you went with it?
It was really just very timely, I think. Renewable energy was just starting to come to the market. Solar was too expensive. The first wind farms were only just being constructed in Australia at the time, early 2000s. Yeah. And this provided an opportunity to provide baseload, large-scale power, conceptually, because it ultimately failed, you'd have to say. But it was what the market wanted to hear. It gravitated a lot of market interest. And in many ways, it wasn't. I mean, the Minerals Story helped us in getting that float away, of course, because we had some runs on the board, but it was something new and different. And at Petratherm Mark I did really well for about 10 years, and we did some fantastic work.
So that geothermal story went for 10 years?
It did, yeah.
Wow. Okay.
I remember the first conference I went to was in Sydney, 18 months into our life. There might have been 30 people there. 5 years later in Brisbane, we had the annual geothermal conference. There were 500 people present. And then almost as quickly, the whole market died again. So by about 2011, 2012, geothermal had died in Australia. And Petratherm was really, put on the shelf for a period.
Pete, to add to that, it only died because of the economics, not because of the technology.
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
I mean, we were successful, a technical success, but if you looked at the economics of it, none of them worked. So it was really an economic thing rather than a technical thing.
That's right. I mean, there's a huge amount of energy present, but just the economics behind drilling deep holes, the subsurface risk of drilling those deep holes. We drilled a hole at east of Paralana Hot Springs to 4 kilometres depth. It cost us close to $20 million to drill that hole. And then you've got to frack those rocks. You've got to fracture the rock at depth.
Say that word.
Yeah. It's funny. Like, we were actually promoting it at the time. There was a resort nearby, and we got the proprietor to advertise. Spend a weekend while we're fracking and feel the earth move. When you. But a different time, of course. And I mean, that whole fracking story is ridiculous, really, because it is quite a safe technology, provided it's managed properly. When we generated our frac, we actually was one of the biggest fracs in Australia. We generated over 10,000 micro earthquakes. There were 3 or 4 of them that could be felt within within near vicinity of there, but we're talking magnitude of 2. Yeah. So just like an air gun or a lorry driving past your house, that sort of rumble. But it generated a large reservoir that we could actually draw water from. So we're quite successful in generating a large, what they call a heat exchanger, where you have a lot of fractures in the granite. You can access the heat from the granite through pumping water through it. And we got to the point where we've drilled our injection well, we'd fracked the granite, then we needed another 20 million to drill another hole to create a loop where we have injecting water to 4 kilometres depth, passing through the hot granite and then bringing it to the surface.
Bringing the heat up.
Bringing the heat up. But by that time, we're talking, 2010, 2011, solar power is being installed everywhere, wind is being installed everywhere, and our financiers, I guess it was a lot easier to go and buy a wind farm or put some solar panels up than it was to invest in geothermal, which had a lot more subsurface and technical risk associated with it. So it's sort of ironic in a way. I remember the early days of Petrotherm, I thought our competitors were the coal producers and the gas producers, but actually our competitors were the wind guys and these hippies that put a few solar panels on the roof. But it was suddenly a mainstream business, and we became obsolete. They beat us in that market.
I think also at the time though there was a change in government, and government policy supporting renewables and that sort of dropped away as well, didn't it? So
It did. There wasn't a lot of government support. We were successful in getting some very large grants. I think at one point we had a $64 million grant to help facilitate development of this project. But it took several years to obtain that money, and by the time we obtained the money from the feds, we couldn't get the money. We couldn't get matching funding from the private sector because the interest had waned from the private sector. Early on, we actually had some big joint venture partners. We had Beach Energy in there as a JV partner. True Energy, which is now Energy Australia, were joint venture partners in that Paralana geothermal project.
Do you think now, I'm a uranium guy, I think base load power is the future, and South Australia is kind of different because you guys seem to be, I've heard a lot of commentary that you guys are doing well with renewable. Do you think some places where they're saying, well, renewable is not going to happen, could we go back to an investment for geothermal for baseload power as if we don't want uranium? Do you think, is there commentaries on that side that you guys know that we have not heard?
To a degree, although I think ultimately it's also how you connect into the market, and you need a good geothermal source close to market or close to connection nodes, because that's a huge part of the overall economics, is how you connect into that market. And I think in Australia's case, we probably don't have adequate geothermal resources close to markets that you can commercially connect into. But potentially there are some areas, say in the Perth Basin or the Otways, there in some of those basin areas that you could develop something commercially, but it's still a high risk venture.
So I think, Pete, isn't it correct that to actually have it successfully develop meaningful power, you need about 6 holes interconnected with one in the middle to do it? So if we were talking 20 mil for the first hole, obviously come down from there, it might be 15 or 10 mil. But you're talking a huge infrastructure cost to do a successful geothermal at 4 kilometres down in granite.
Exactly, yeah. There's a huge infrastructure cost. Drilling costs need to come down. And I think our learnings too were wrong. Well, our initial focus early was wrong. We were targeting heat. Everyone was targeting heat. But really you want to be targeting permeability, which is how you can flow water through the rock at depth. And one of the learnings from all the work we did around Australia, the whole industry, was actually there's lots of water at 3 or 4 kilometres depth in the crust that you can tap straight into. But how do you find those natural permeable zones with natural hot aquifer systems that you target? So I think that's the next iteration for geothermal, to target those sorts of systems, but our focus was more on the heat. We found the heat, but of course then it was more of a challenge to get high flow rates, because it's a combination of temperature and flow rate to give you the total energy output from those wells.
Interesting. I kind of know that the name Petratherm and everything else, but my thinking of Petratherm has always been you guys chasing IOCG in the Gawler. So when did that come about, moving from where you are now, our discussion?
So I guess Petratherm had a good innings for 10 years and then died a slow death. We put it on the shelf.
Well, not a death, sort of a coma.
Coma is probably more appropriate.
Coma, yeah.
And
Induced coma.
Yeah.
And around 2018, our brokers said, there's a bit of interest in minerals again. As you know, probably around 2015, 2018 period was a terrible period for the junior space.
Yeah.
There was no finance anywhere. And they approached Derek and the board and said, we might better get a bit of money for exploration and let's reinvigorate Petratherm. So we got the band back together basically, and the Petrotherm that was IPO'd in 2018, and we raised 4 million, I think at the time, to get it back listed on the stock exchange, was really the old Minotaur from the early 2000s. Got the band back together, we're exploring for copper and gold, and off we went.
So was that still listed at that time?
Yes. So the main reason I think that the brokers came back to us also was that we were threatened to be delisted because the company had a bit of cash, but no tenements. So you couldn't have a.
Well, they didn't like that.
The ASX didn't like that at all. So they threatened to delist it, and a lot of the shareholders in and still are in Petratherm or PTR Minerals, were clients of the broker that we dealt with, and they were all very much in favour of bringing the old team back together so we would avoid delisting and then get onto the mineral side. And we basically put the old Minotaur team together again.
Because 2015 was a very interesting year. I remember I wrote something about it, and 2015 was when every commodity, including oil and gas, was going south. And it was almost like a point where they hit bottom and then they started to rise out for 16, 17, 18. And it was probably the first time where commodities, minerals and oil and gas went the same direction, because normally they're opposite, right? Because and I said, this must be the real bottom because oil and gas is following. And then it bounced off, and I thought, no, this is going up. So interesting that these guys then say, hey, they might be interested in exploration again, because I don't think even then, I think we mentioned before that really hasn't had any real exploration since probably the 80s and maybe early 90s. That maybe this year might be different, but so that was the search for copper again in South Australia around that time?
Well, that's what basically the brokers and the investors and the shareholders of Petratherm were interested in, to follow Minotaur in the IOCGs. But I mean, there's a big history there. Pete did a terrific job in getting some IOCG targets, but then he came up with the idea of this layered complex down south at Muckaninny, and well, there's a story. That's the story now for PTR Minerals.
So when did that happen? When that thought?
So we built a copper gold position in the Olympic domain of South Australia, and we had a couple of exploration campaigns going, and at the same time there was some old ground in the northern Gawler Craton, and there was an old gold prospect there called Comet that actually Minotaur found back in the mid-90s. And I don't know if you're old enough, but there was a boom back in the mid-90s here in South Australia, and I was just a graduate geologist like Sam is.
I just walked out there in 92, so...
We're with similar vintage. So Minotaur found that using calcarete soil sampling. That was, the panacea to find all the gold prospects in the northern Gawler, and it found Challenger and Tunkelia, which I understand you're going to talk to the discoverers of soon. And Comet was another one of these little gold shows. But at that point, at the time we found Comet, was also the dot-com bubble. And there was no investment, no money to follow that project up, but it was one that I put in the bottom drawer of my mind, thinking that's a really interesting prospect. There's a bit of gold there, and 20 years later, that ground became available again, and we picked it up through a competitive bid and got that. And I was also a skeptic about calcarete sampling as an effective screening tool to find gold in the bedrock below. As soon as you get a bit of transported cover, it's masked. So we knew that there was often a little anomaly at the top of the weathered zone, top of the saprolite. So our model was to go back with an auger rig and drill down, instead of taking a sample at 1 metre, let's go down 10 metres and sample the top of the saprolite. And we did that on a grid basis at Comet, and we found some gold anomalies, which was interesting. But at that same time, we're talking now probably around, around 2019, 2020, was rare earths. They were popping up everywhere. And lo and behold, we did full suite geochemistry. We saw there's a lot of rare earths in our saprolite there.
They're not very rare, are they?
They're not very rare. And so we, of course, got very excited about that, and we followed that up initially. And our rare earths were a bit different. I mean, there's a whole bunch of companies that went looking for clay-hosted rare earths, 4 or 5 years ago. and there was a nice little bubble that we ran with. But ours were associated with a particular highly magnetic layered intrusions that we could see. And they also had elevated titanium, elevated PGEs, a bit of gold, and rare earths. And we thought, well, these layered mafic complexes are interesting things. And we could see them on the magnetics popping around, and we found other rare earth prospects there. And we quickly realised too, the metallurgy was useless. We couldn't extract the rare earths, so let's move on. But it pricked our attention towards the Makanipi area to the southwest,
So that stuff was all towards the northern part
to the northern, round Comet, to the northeast. So about 50 k's, 50 k's to the southwest. Yep. There's a huge, it looks like an eye, a layered intrusion called the Makanipi Suite intrusion. And we thought that some of our magnetic complexes were probably a part of that same hydrothermal event. Maybe we should go there. And there was one drill hole actually drilled for IOCGs of all things, I think by, might have been BHP back in the late 70s. They drilled the centre of this thing looking for IOCGs and hit a mafic rock, but it was high in phosphate, high in titanium and high in rare earths. And that got us into the Makanipi area. And we built a position over a couple of years there. And as we started doing groundwork, we started seeing, actually, well, there's a bit of gold here, there's some PGEs floating around, there's a bit of rare earths, but we're seeing titanium popping up everywhere. And there were two large magnetic features peripheral to the main intrusion, one called Widgety that had been drilled in the late 90s, and that got hundreds of metres of magnetite with quite high titanium. So we're talking 200 metres plus and open at depth, running at 20-25% iron, but 5 to 8% titanium mineralisation, which is borderline economic, and hundreds of millions of tonnes of the stuff. So that interested us. And I guess Barry and Sam, I should say, are working on this project work at the time, and I'll hand over to them in a sec. But one thing we saw with that old exploration too, there was actually, of all things, a company that looking for commoditites up there chasing diamonds, drilled a little subtle magnetic blip, and that came back with 20% titanium in the weathered basement zone. We thought, well, that's economic, anything over 15%. So that really picked up our interest. The company was on its bare bones at that time. We're down to about $1 million.
What year was this?
Oh, this is sort of 2024 or 2023, is it? I'm trying to think. 18 months ago?
Yeah, 2024 was when we first went on the ground.
Yeah, went on the ground. So by that time, we just got access to do work on the ground. And I remember saying to Sam, look, just get out there. You never know what you might find on the ground. And the Gawler Craton has occasionally the odd little outcrop or a bit of weathered zone. And Sam spent quite a bit of time looking at Google Earth, trying to see where he thought there might be some weathered basement. And we'd assay that to see whether we could find some high titanium areas. Because we knew now that actually, well, most titanium minerals aren't that magnetic. We don't need to go to the magnetic zones. Let's just go anywhere and just see if we can pick up something within that layered complex that might have high titanium mineralisation. And I guess I'll hand over to Barry and Sam to talk about their fieldwork and what they found on the ground.
Yeah, well, I think you've explained that very well, Pete. We'd done all that paperwork in the background and the office-based work to try and generate targets, but then it came time to get boots on the ground and actually do some mapping, and Pete was very keen that we go out there and see if we can find some gossans, I guess. And I must admit, I was like, Pete, hundreds of geos have walked across this ground. You're not going to find a gossan of mineralisation sticking out the ground. It's been explored for 40, 50 years. What are the chances? But Sam put together a good little program of sites to visit, just as Pete said, from Google Earth, didn't you?
Yeah, basically just trying to find locations where it looked like there might be some outcrop from satellite imagery or from the elevation models where there might be a slope, or we could potentially find some basement outcrop was the real aim.
Yeah, so in August 24, just you and I just went out with the ute and decided to do a bit of mapping, didn't we? So
yeah.
Do you remember the discovery outcrop?
Yeah. I mean, we saw these little black minerals hosted in sediments. I mean, none of us, we knew it was interesting, so we took some samples and sent them off to the lab, but I don't think we were expecting the numbers to come back as high as they did.
No, I mean, it was like, it looked kind of very ferruginous and black, but it wasn't dense like an ironstone, was it? So it was kind of weird. I think that sample, do you remember what that sample assayed? That first one, was it 40 something percent TiO2?
Yeah, it came back as 27% TI, which I think equates to something over 40. Yep.
And that was just a random outcrop that was on the ground that was sticking out. So Pete was right all along. I guess we were initially out there looking for potentially hard rock titanium, but this was definitely different. So Sam and I went straight back out and did a bigger mapping program all along this tiny escarpment or low escarpment, followed it for 5 or 6 Ks, and every now and then as you'd walk along this escarpment you'd see more of this black mineralisation, sometimes in layers, sometimes just as a sort of a crusty thing. And we were getting from 5 to 45% titanium all the way along this.
Was it very thick when you're walking?
Well, it was hard to tell because it's very erratic outcrop. So sometimes there'd be a little bit of a gully that would cut into the outcrop, and you could see that it might be 10 metres thick, but not necessarily all mineralised. But then you might not see another outcrop for another 800 metres, and then it might be as thick, thicker. So it was really hard to tell how thick it was, but we knew it was laterally very extensive, and it looked like it was flat lying. So there was a good chance it was going to keep going under a little bit of siltcrete heading north. So at that stage, while we were out there doing that, you were looking at the drill hole database, weren't you?
Yeah, well, no, I was with you, and we were working along it, and there's an old north-south road running through there, and I was aware of some old drilling there. We'd actually already assayed some of those old holes for rare earths, and I just remember saying to the guys, well, we should go back to those holes, boys, and because the core, these holes were drilled in 1991 of all things. Early day by the mines department. They're in the core library here in South Australia. So when we get back to Adelaide, let's look at those holes. And so Sam pulled them out as soon as we got back to Adelaide, and we all went down to the core library and had a look at these old drill cuttings. And they'd never assayed for titanium, but also they'd never assayed the cover. And we'd realised that by that time this is sedimentary cover, and we could see in 10 minutes that there were some good zones of high titanium. And these holes were drilled at kilometre spacing, north-south, and we'd traced the mineralisation west-east for about 8 Ks. And we had good mineralisation in 4 or 5 holes, so we thought, oh, this is actually something potentially quite big. And then they got crazy with the geochem and analysis, and we made an announcement. Barry, I don't know, you want to talk about that? That was in
September?
September.
Yeah.
And we're talking about 9/11, I think it was the same date.
Again?
Yeah, again. So that's kind of ironic, isn't it?
But it was really interesting, just for the exercise of doing mapping and doing some geochem from historical stuff that was stored at the core library. We managed to go from 2 cents to 20 cents, I think.
So this is September 25 or 24?
24.
Yep.
We went actually from 2 cents to 5 cents on that announcement.
Yeah.
We raised 3 million at 3.5 cents. We followed up with drilling soon after, like a couple of months later, and got great results. We're talking, 30 metres at 20% heavy minerals, and it's all titanium mineral. We went then very quickly up to 20 cents in a day on the back of that initial drill campaign. So it was quite a big uplift, and all those people that bought in at 3.5 cents were laughing.
Yeah, and then it's just been hell for leather ever since then, I think, Noel. I think we did that initial program of drilling. So we did the initial mapping in sort of August 24. We did our first round of drilling in October. So within 2 months we were out there with the drill rig, and we drilled an initial, I've got the numbers here, 50 holes for 1,700 metres. Got great results that Pete was talking about from that. Went out there again in March, drilled another 65 holes, went out there again in June, drilled another 60 holes, and then just December, by then we'd realised how extensive it was, 6 kilometres north-south, 8 kilometres east-west. And we went out in December and drilled another 450 odd holes, nearly 10,000 metres worth of drilling, which will put us in a position to release a maiden JORC resource by Q2 this year. So I think in 14 months' time, in a 14-month period, we've drilled 621 holes at the Rosewood prospect, which is what we've named it, for nearly 15,000 metres. So it's an incredible amount of work in just over a year, and I think we're heading well on the way towards recognising this as a significant national or maybe even international discovery.
So when you guys say great results, for those, I mean, not many people are familiar with the titanium story. I mean, I remember when the rare earths came out, I said, you know, what does that number mean? What is a good number, right? Yeah. So what is a good number for this?
These are mineral sands, titanium mineral sands, and it's quite unique in that we've got, I talked about this layered anorthosite, that's the local source. So that was exposed in recent geological times, we're talking 30 million years ago, that's recent. And it washed its titanium and concentrated on an ancient shoreline and deposited these heavy mineral bands there. So it's an inland sea environment. It's quite unique for that reason. And typically a mineral sands deposit might be 4 or 5% heavy mineral grade you would mine. We're talking ours are 10, 20, 30% grades. So as an average, we're talking hundreds of millions of tonnes at well over 10% heavy minerals.
But heavy mineral is heavy minerals, so you're talking about 4%, for example. 4% of that sample is heavy mineral. But what percentage does the actually constitute matter, right?
That's the other unique thing about it, is that it's almost all titanium mineral. So of that 10%, 90% of it is titanium heavy minerals. So there's almost no waste. And it's a bit unique too, because we have a little bit of zircon, but not much, maybe a small credit. Well, that's another thing too. It's been upgraded, thankfully. Geology has been kind to us, and the rocks, we think, rather than through weathering, it's been mainly that primary mineral was a high titanium bearing mineral. So it's principally a leucoxene mineral, and it ranges in concentrations, you know, a low-grade mineral might be 55%, but it will go all the way up to 95%, and it probably averages around 70-75%.
Whereas ilmenite's normally around sort of 30 to 40, isn't it?
So 30 to 50. Then you have altered ilmenite. So it's a high-grade titanium product that we can produce. We haven't put out a JORC resource yet, but if you go to Hot Copper or you go to see our brokers, they put out their own resource statements already, because it's pretty simple science. You know, we know roughly the dimensions, we know roughly the thickness, we know roughly the grade. People know it's big and high grade, and we'll have the official JORC resource put out to the market Q2 of this year. And only last week we released further results from the Rosewood South zone. I think we're getting, you know, 30-metre intercepts at, you know, 15% heavy minerals. It's a spectacular intercept. Some intervals are even up to 50% heavy minerals.
And from surface as well. So literally we found this thing by mapping, so parts of it stick literally out of the ground, but even at its deepest it's only 5 or 6 metres below surface. So low stripping ratios, free dig, it ticks a lot of boxes.
No, any native titles?
We have one native title group with the Antacrinia people, which we have got great relationships with. We've worked with them for many years now. We're old South Australian explorers, and they know us as well as we know them. And we've conducted probably 4 or 5 surveys in that area just in the last couple of years, and they're fully supportive of the project going forward.
And they've also got a history of development in that ground. So Challenger Gold Mine, there's several iron ore mines near us that are currently being developed, so they're very pro mining development.
So that area there is close to, I noticed Iluka has a lot of tenements around there, and back in the day at Dominion they did find something that had heavy minerals in that area. I think the project was called Barton West or something like that. Are you guys in that area?
We're a little bit to the northeast, so most of the mineral sands exploration, and there was a boom in the late mid-90s on that too, was, you know, the Murray Basin, and also looking at older strand lines. Iluka had their Jacinth Ambrosia discovery on ancient strand lines in the Great Australian Basin. It was all about, it was sort of thinking from the coast back into older coastal systems, whereas no one had really explored actually on the inland sea strand lines, and Makanipi or Rosewood prospect is an inland sea strand line. So it's a little bit different, and the energy of that strand line is a lot lower because it's more like a lake than a wild Southern Ocean or anything, but because we've got this local source, that's why we've got such high grades, and the ancient streams have washed it down into that little shoreline system.
Because you got that ultramafic unit driving all the way down to the where Tropicana and all that is, the Albany Fraser. Isn't that the main one that drives?
Yes. That's another belt across from where we are.
Okay.
Yeah, but similar age.
But slightly different chemistry as well. I think our chemistry is a little bit different with this anorthosite, which is reasonably unique, which is I think why our tenements and our exploration is really the prime place to be, because that unique chemistry is what gives us this very high grade titanium mineralisation.
So I'm assuming we're talking about big resource.
Yes.
What you guys have in terms of size, because of what you guys mentioned.
We have an exploration target out there which has an upper end of 350 million tonnes, and we put that exploration target out 12 months ago, I guess.
Long time ago, yeah.
Yes, and our drilling is definitely heading in that direction, at least.
Talking about the timing, I feel a bit cheated because I'm pretty sure early 24 I was talking to somebody from Petrotherm in Singapore. Was any of you guys there?
No, that wasn't us. Must have been someone else. And we continue to rise. I think we're sitting around close to 30 cents currently, and we peaked at 40 after probably a second round of drilling. But I think we're uniquely placed right now. We're doing a lot of the detailed metallurgical work associated with looking at the project economics, and that's looking really favourable.
What's your market cap now?
Just over 100 mil, I think.
Oh.
Yeah. And Rob's really the modern Petrotherm. He's driving the scene now, where we sit, where we're undertaking, I guess, critical scoping study works to advance this project.
Yeah.
And I think people are starting to realise the full value of it, because as you know, titanium is a bit of an opaque market. And this is we've got a big high grade thing. And I don't think the market fully realises how much this thing could be worth.
Because I did follow Pete, who's now Line Rock, and DY6, and they were all in Africa playing the titanium game. And it's like you say, it's not only opaque, it's actually not that well known of the value and the potential value. And I'm always like, if it's in your backyard, it's a lot easier to deal with, especially in Australia. So how's the market?
Yeah, it's interesting actually, because mineral sands doesn't have a great history in Australia. If you look at there's a number of projects that haven't gone that well, and when analysts have a look, it's you do need to spend a bit of time understanding the industry and how it works. And as Pete's mentioned, it's quite opaque, so potentially not enough work goes into it, and it's very easy for people to not sort of dig into it. But I think even if you put that to one side and you look at what is happening here at Petrotherm, and you start to just think of what's a quality resource project, and you think of something that's clearly long life, you think of something that's potentially going to be quite low cost, as Barry was saying. It's shallow, it's free dig. When you think about the processing, it's what the work that we've done to date responds well to gravity, normal gravity processing just through the spirals, if you like. And in fact, because it's quite a coarse deposit, so a lot of the new mineral sands deposits are quite fine, which are much harder to deal with through those conventional processing techniques. This project responds very well to that, and the work that we're doing now in terms of the metallurgy, it's also now responding well over the magnets and the electrostatic. So it's all heading in the right direction, and potentially what you have here is a very big project that is hopefully going to process relatively well, which means it should be, from the capital perspective, should be quite low cost. And because it's so high grade, we won't need to push to the nth degree to get recoveries. Like we've seen projects that have got a 2% grade compared to, as Pete was talking about, for us 10% grade. So the pressure's not on us to spend a lot of capital recovering every grain of sand, if you like. We've got a lot of flexibility around our process. So yeah, we're very hopeful that if you've got a really good ore body and you can process it relatively cheaply, then it's going to be long life. It's going to outlive, or maybe not so much Sam, but certainly the rest of us won't probably be around like this thing's going. But you sort of tick the box as a world-class project, and that's what we hope we're dealing with here. And in the not too distant future, particularly as we finish our met work, we'll have a really good feel for what we've got. Already we've produced what they call a heavy mineral concentrate, which is your first lot of processing. So you dig it up, you put it through your wet plant, you get your HMC, and we've already got a high quality HMC that we can sell. But what we're now doing is saying, can we take that HMC and turn it into a final product, and greatly enhance the economics of what we're doing, and that's the work that we're currently doing. And touch wood, it's that work's going really well. So we're in a really interesting stage, particularly when, as Pete and Barry are saying, this deposit was only found in sort of September of 24. You think that what we've identified, looks like a world-class titanium project. So we're pretty excited, and as I say, in the not too distant future, it'll be really interesting to see where we get to with the met work.
The titanium stories, to me, obviously from the doing Samso, I talked to a lot of people, especially when the rare earths came. It was like, what's the resource? Everyone's going, what's the resource? I mean, almost practically everyone who had a rare earth project at that time, you're talking about millions and billions of tons, and come to a point where you say, well, how much do you need? Yeah, and I'm kind of looking at it, and obviously I get the drift that the resources there and everything else, and sounds like the gods of geology has been good to you guys to enrich your mineralogy. But do you find from obviously commercial side of things, I know you just said that there is some opaqueness in the market, and it's hence very hard for people to understand. But the layperson, the who would go, this is a great story, 100 million, yes, this could be $1 billion, 10 bagger, etc. Do you find that they are still reluctant to jump in because they just don't get the upside or the risk involved?
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, again, I wouldn't necessarily think. I feel that when the project is, I don't want to say largely de-risked, but as I said, we've already produced a product that, and look, we haven't done any of the numbers yet, so I don't know this for sure. But when you think about what it's going to cost us to do just to produce an HMC, and as I say, Strandline started producing an HMC, Image produces an HMC, so there's a ready market for selling that HMC, and we've already developed a very high quality HMC. So, I believe that we've potentially got a product that can already sort of generate a very good project for PTR. And the question for us now is, how much better can we make that project? And I think if you produce a final product, you're much more in control of your destiny, because potentially you deal directly with the end market as opposed to someone that's got to take that HMC and do the separation into final products themselves. So, that's the trick for us. So, as I say, we'll build a wet plant up near Muckaninny. We've got, with very high level, thinking that we'll then take that HMC and we'll bring it down to potentially a mineral separation plant at somewhere like a Whyalla, make the final product there and put it on the boat to take it to final destinations from there. So we sit right next to the railway line, so it's very easy for us to, take that 10% out of the normal sand once you've done that separation, bring it down on the train, do your final separations at Whyalla right next to the port, and then put it straight on the boat and send it to market.
Would you say then the risk is more on that side of business now than what they've been talking about?
Yeah, well, risk, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, risk in terms of value creation.
It's really, how do we sort of take this project to the next level, if you like, and it's by creating a final product. And, this is where we're spending a lot of our time, and a lot of the market's saying to us, okay, what's the metallurgy look like? What do the products look like? And, because we have a lot of flexibility with the ore, so the ore's being as coarse it is, as already what we've done is we've found by putting attritioning at the front end, we can take that coarse ore down to a finer grain, and now we've got 3 different streams of HMC. where we're getting good recoveries from each of those streams and better recoveries than if you just process the one stream. So all of this is just iterative type of work, if you like. And so now, we're into that next phase where we've got a pretty good HMC here, and we're continuing to improve that HMC. But then how do we sort of maximise the recoveries of that HMC product? And so that's and again, people tell you we've got about we've been through 68 odd tests, different tests, assays all the time. That it's a lot of iterative work. We're working with two of the world's leading consultants up in Queensland, in terms of how do we sort of get the best product with the most efficient process, and it just takes a bit of time. But as I say, I still shake my head every now and again to just think that this thing was only discovered 16 months ago or whatever it is. We've come an incredible way in a very short period of time.
They seem to have a history of developing projects quickly, because Prominent Hill was from what was it, 3 months or something we talked about, from when you actually got the results where your metals started to show. And this one's just, here's another one.
Yeah, well, we think we're in a good jurisdiction. We're in pastoral country. We have one native title owner. So I think from an environmental and approval point of view, I think we're in a really good spot where we can develop this, see the mining approvals done quite quickly. We're also quite close to the Adelaide to Darwin rail, so we've got easy access to port. We can go out west, we can go north. We're most likely going to go down to Whyalla and set up a mineral separation plant at that facility. So not only is it, we're blessed with great geology, but it's also well located, I think, in terms of permitting and approvals.
Yeah, I mean, you can always say, right, at least you've got a problem to try and solve. Most people haven't got to this stage yet.
It all comes down to a quality ore body, right? Any resource project that you look at, if you've got a high grade ore body that potentially processes well, you're off to a great start.
Yeah. I mean, it's always the argument, right? You can say all you like, but at the end of the day, the development of a project takes years, and unfortunately, a lot of investors think it takes weeks or months, and today it's even worse, right? If your one drilling program comes back negative, it's like, oh, geez, God, that's it, But look, I think in terms of resource development going forward, I think it is a much better be in a position where I've got a problem to solve than no problems.
Well, and really our problem is how do we sort of optimise it and improve it. As I said, I think we've already got to a point where we've got a product that we could sell for a profit tomorrow. But it's now doing that work and seeing how we can really take it to that next level.
If I could just add a little bit extra to all this on an overview of it. We're in a Tier 1 country, Australia, for development. We're in a Tier 1 state for developing an ore body. We've got a Tier 1 sized ore body. We've got a Tier 1 grade of that ore body. It's now just a matter of, not just a matter, it's now a matter of putting all those together.
Chairman's allowed to say just
You're not getting a pay rise, that's what I'm saying.
When you've got a Tier 1 deposit in a Tier 1 location, it's going to be successful. And I think that sums up this discovery. It's a Tier 1, it will be a Tier 1 discovery in a Tier 1 location. The other thing I'd like to say is these blokes here have done an unbelievable job. There's been, I don't know how many companies have been over Muckaninny. I don't know how many geologists have walked over Muckaninny, but it's these blokes who recognise it. And I reckon that's a fabulous feather in their caps. I think you've done a terrific job because there would have been 100 people over that and you were the only ones who recognise it. So congratulations to these fellas.
I think one of the things you guys brought up, which I wanted to mention, but you just reminded me, is that there are very few people in this, say the last 10 years, where, fuel mapping is almost non-existent these days. Everyone's looking at geophysical image and then go, oh, let's go there. I walked around our project in South Australia and things like that, and you see things that you never think about it, And I think that's the key, right? Somehow or other, I know you can't walk every square metre, because in South Australia, all tenements are measured in hundreds of kilometres. But it does make a difference, I think, even though that a lot of people say, oh, there's no outcrop, but you do find it.
No, that's a good point, Noel. But I think we spoke about this a little bit yesterday on the Prominent Hill talk. It's good to have your models, which help you pick up the ground and get in there. But when you're out there and you are mapping or you're developing some targets, you can't be too model constrained, and you've got to keep your eyes open for something that's a little bit different. It might not even be the commodity that you're out there necessarily looking for, but as an explorer, you have to look at every opportunity and not just stick to your little pigeonhole. And I think the team that we've developed from Sam up are guys that go out there open-minded, to look at any opportunity, and I think that's a reason why we've managed to get what other people haven't gotten.
Yeah, I think, as Derek's saying, the guys here were sort of understating the outcrop. We were literally talking dinner plate size exposures that you find in amongst the saltbush, and to recognise those dark minerals, most people would have walked, if they did walk over the area, would have thought that's just a bit of iron. But look at them closely and see, actually that colour of that mineral is a little bit different. It's got a different reflectivity to it. And then, to bag it, and that's sort of what led to it. I think just having keen eyes and an open mind.
I think that speaks a lot of volumes. It's understating what you guys do, and the chances of you seeing it walking past that path instead of 10 metres the other way, and noticing something different. I keep telling people, don't try and tell me what rock type it is. Just tell me how you describe it. Because 9 out of 10 times you're probably right describing it, but 9 out of 10 times you're wrong giving me the name anyway. Not that I know it, but look, in terms of PTR for you guys, we've gone through the what you need to do in the next steps in terms of the project development. Do you have what else is out there? Obviously, people like you guys would be thinking, what's the next step? What is other things in store in PTR for the market, or other projects?
We maintain a strong copper project portfolio, and we've got 2 large project holdings in the Olympic domain. I know, Barry, maybe you're best to talk about that. The Mabel Creek project in the Northern Olympic domain, and the Woomera project quite close to the recent Oak Dam discovery. They're drill ready. We've got drill ready targets there, and we're targeting. We're talking about IOCG systems, and there's a spectrum, and so far the last 30 years we've found the breccia pipes. There's a lot of copper found in different ways in the Olympic domain. One thing that's under recognised are what they call these strata form or strata bound type copper deposits, where we've had the IOCG breccia pipes come up, but then they've replaced a lot of rock surrounding. So we have these stratiform or flat lying copper bearing mineralised systems, and that's what Coda Minerals have been drilling up at Emmy Bluff, and they've got some good grade intercepts. But for instance, on our Woomera project area, there are 3 holes that drilled by Western Mining and other explorers back in the day, all intercepted 100 metres of about 0.3 copper, spread over about a 10 kilometre square area. That whole area has got 0.3 copper over hundreds of metres. It's phenomenal. There's probably 500 million tonnes of copper just in that area alone on our tenement. But the trick is, are there high grade zones to that system? So that's something that Barry's team are working on, exploring and finding ways to see where the copper has been focused. And we know that there's strong structural controls on these things, and we are looking at feeder systems and the like to target. But that could be, we intend to drill those targets in the next 12 months, hopefully, and that could be another game changer. So that's still the focus for us. We've got some great gold assets too in the Northern Gawler with all that early work. They're just sitting there. Right now the focus is Rosewood. We think that could be a world-class development, and it's the sort of project that we can develop because we're talking shallow, free dig, pretty simple spiral technologies. It's the sort of thing that a junior can take from discovery through to production and mining. So hopefully we're not a junior for long, and there's a vacuum gap here. When I started geology in South Australia, we had BHP, then we had a whole bunch of mid-tiers sitting. They've all gone. All those mid-tiers don't exist anymore. We've got BHP and we've got PTR Minerals and a couple other juniors. So hopefully we can fill that gap between BHP and the juniors.
Yeah, there's not many juniors too, if you look at the South Australian scene as well. It's a very interesting place. I keep saying the Gawler is kind of like not necessarily the last frontier, but it's such a prospective area, but it's just, unfortunately, everyone's holding 4,000 square kilometres of space, and then you can probably count, maybe 5 or maybe less active juniors. Then you have BHP.
Who have a massive land holding as well over the Stuart Shelf.
I mean, there is one company holding over 10,000 square kilometres.
Yeah. Land banking is an issue here,
Yeah.
and the government are working on trying to get that churn going, because that's got to drive investment.
Yeah, I mean, look, fantastic. Any last stories? I mean, you guys are basically still in that exploring space. You obviously been in this Gawler area for so long. Any secrets you don't want to give that maybe you should give since you're here?
Yeah.
Boots on the ground.
Boots on the ground.
Yeah.
Boots on the ground.
Yeah. I think, boots on the ground. You've got to get the right team. I think we've got a team that's incredibly technical, but also knows how to sell the story, which Derek has been doing, his whole life. So it's getting that right balance is very tricky, of being technical but doing the corporate sell as well. And we've really lucked out on that, I think, from top to bottom.
So I'll put the youngest guy here on the spot. Camera's on you, mate.
Yeah, no
I'm
worries.
going to zoom in on you when we do the post. You're the new breed, I guess, and what would you give somebody who's just walked out of university and eager to get out there, and what would you say to them?
Yeah, I guess just keeping a real open mind, and like everyone's been saying, boots on the ground. I mean, when I was first looking at the project, I was quite sceptical of Pete saying to just walk out there and find us a new deposit. I thought it was going to be a pretty low chance, but you never know what you're going to find. And when we picked up those first minerals, I mean, neither of us.
I don't think we were expecting to find a mineral sands deposit, Sam.
No,
when we
knew
there.
it was a bit weird, but we just kept an open mind. So
The focus is to look for weathered basement areas for high-grade titanium, and luckily serendipitously found this inland sea deposition with the mineral sands sitting there. And I guess that's where the open mind is, because it didn't fit the model, but you could see the...
Yeah, it was so weathered that you really couldn't pick what kind of rock it was, but then the lateral extent of it really gave away that it was a sediment. That's really what did it for us. So, but not what we were looking for, so it was good. Yeah.
You found something that most people would be happy to have in their portfolio. So
I think so.
I think being part of a discovery is always thing. I mean, I think I mentioned to you guys, I was fortunate enough very early in my career to be part of the team that found bronze ring, and as well as the Merlin diamond field and things like that, even though I didn't play a big part of it. But I think it's just, at least you can say, hey, that's what it's all about, right? You guys finding Prominent Hill and things like that. One last question maybe to you, Derek, is that when you guys sat there and had those numbers come in, did you think you got Olympic Dam, or were you thinking you got a poor cousin?
Are you referring to Prominent Hill, obviously? Well, you were hoping it'd be Olympic Dam, but in reality you knew it wasn't going to be another Olympic Dam because of the geophysical data that we had and its extent. So I'd have to say we hoped, but it turned out to be pretty good.
Poor cousin of Olympic Dam's pretty good. Poor cousin of me was really bad. But look, guys, thank you. Thanks for your time. Really appreciate it. Anyone got a question? I'm pretty sure they'll put their hand and chase you, since you're the lead man.
happy to take questions and calls. My details are on our announcements, so if there's any interest in our project, come and see us.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Noel.
Yep, thank you.